Hello and welcome to a 3v3 cast on Death World Temple. Starting off we have Bulbus playing as the Apothecary. Down here on the left hand side of the map we have Velzavul playing as a Techmarine in the center of the map, and finally for the blue team we have Akiro playing as a Farseer on the right hand side. Moving on to the red side we have Ordre 227 playing as a Lord Commissar. Up against Bulbus on the left hand side of the map we have zeetorq sprinting in there as a Warlock, trying to jump on to that Techmarine, and we also have Hunter finishing up the red team lineup as a Mekboy on the top side on the upper platform at the moment. Warlock already backing away there, doesn't look like he actually jumped onto the Techmarine given that he is still full health. You know, on the top side of the map, Mekboy is going to try and fire at that Farseer along with the help of some shooters, but Dire Avengers trying to counter there. They are guided, you can tell by the yellow circles underneath them, giving them extra 30% range and 30% damage. Farseer now just going to sit behind some green cover and allow Dire Avengers to engage this Mekboy. The Mekboy should be able to bleed away some models. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map, Bulbus going to go for double scouts. Normally don't see that too often against Imperial guard players. A bit harder to make scouts work given that they have such a low health pool, and given that when you get upgraded to shotguns they do actually have reduced range, allowing guardsmen to tear them down, and their default bolters not actually doing too much damage. Takes 2 scout squads to do the same damage output as a single tactical marine squad, and even then that's not actually that high when you compare it to other tier 1 units. You know, Dire Avengers actually coming in for a little bit of a flank here. Velzavul, his tactical marines are extremely low at the moment, losing a model there to the Dire Avengers, but Dire Avengers now outside the green cover, going to get meleeed down here by a tactical marine squad by Bulbus. The APO has already been forced off, so there's no heal for those tactical marines, but the zeetorq is going to leap in there with his Warlock Sentinels also pushing in very aggressively here. Cracking rounds are activated, but focusing down that Warlock instead of the Sentinel. Cracking rounds do not do bonus damage to commander armor, it's only effective for Stenguard veterans. Regular tactical marines do not deal bonus damage to commanders with cracking rounds, only to heavy infantry. About very early purchase here of bionics for the Techmarine. Very interesting to see such an early upgrade on that Techmarine, especially when up against guardsmen at this point, although there are banshees for zeetorq, and that's more than likely the reason why he's gone for the bionics, although bionics is a fairly cheap upgrade and is always useful even if you're not necessarily up against melee units or dedicated melee units. Can be very nice in Space Marine Mirror, for example, up against enemy tactical marines if they try to force melee onto your units. You know, the APO trying to melee down that Sentinel. The APO doesn't really deal too much damage early on, dealing about 23 DPS there with his default melee weapon. Not really going to have much of an impact against that heavy infantry Sentinel. Meanwhile, these guardsmen though gain very low hit, actually going to go down to these tactical marines. In fact, that Sentinel is also going to fall down in the very same engagement, and Lord Commissar now by himself there with the Aura of Decay, or the Aura of Discipline rather. But is going to get forced off in the end since it's not really doing much to actually heal himself back up, but Dire Avengers are already on the scene to take back over. These scouts taking a fair amount of damage. Tactical Marine is going to try and force melee here, but the Warlock is going to leap in, and that's going to force the squad into a retreat. These Dire Avengers should be able to shred these scouts here, especially with their shotguns. They have a very short range, making it very difficult for them to get into the face of the Dire Avengers unless you use the elite training which comes with the infiltration ability. Even then, Dire Avengers do have a detection radius of 15 with the Exarch leading both of the squads, but the scouts do need the infiltration in order to get close enough to actually try and get into the face of these Dire Avengers, or need to infiltrate and actually get into a better position, because if they try to run head on in, they will just get absolutely melted. Now on the other side of the map, Hunter seems to be having an equal fight here against Akiro, who has gone for double guardian weapons teams. Guide weapons team a bit hard to make work against the Mekboy, especially when he can just teleport in and force melee, especially with that electric armor, dealing damage to all nearby units, dealing power melee as well in fact. So it's actually slightly more effective against the guardian weapons team, since its lead model is heavy infantry. Meanwhile, Lord Commissar here, grouping up here with zeetorq. The Immolator has been purchased, which is a very interesting choice against Bulbus, and Velzavul must have been worried about a turret going up there for Velzavul, who is playing as a Techmarine. He is known for building turrets or beacons, and a lot of Techmarine players do tend to do that in 3v3 given their strength. But the Immolator is also a very useful melee weapon, much better than the default Warlock weapon by far, even against heavy infantry. Is always useful. The damage over time and increased melee damage is just so effective. Meanwhile, Flare is actually going to go down here from allied units. Meanwhile, what's that ability? Gain used there onto the same unit. Hunter not microing the units properly. Meanwhile, Guardsmen and Catechins are in the vicinity. Those Banshees should go down if the Catechins force melee onto the squad, but they're not forcing melee here. Unreliable on retreat can still save it by killing that Banshee squad, but the Unreliable they're hitting to the right instead. That Banshee squad that could have been wiped and could have helped out Hunter by quite a bit. Meanwhile, Power Bashing is on at the other side of the map. Bulbus already going to get forced off though. He's able to take down the power node, but is unable to take down anything further. Velzavul is going to be jumping in with his ASM. The Techmarine is already on the scene, already using the bionics, and the Banshee is going to jump onto him. But the Banshees really should be focusing down the ASM instead, since that Techmarine is not going to bleed any models, and zeetorq is actually going to get forced off completely here. I feel like the Dire Avengers could have remained in the fight, could have fought off those ASM with the help of that Warlock. Meanwhile, the ASM actually going to go in for a decap onto the power, was not noded in time there by Red Team, and the ASMs are free to attempt a decap against them. Meanwhile, the Catechins and Guardsmen here for 227, pushing onto the opposite side of the map, leaving zeetorq alone to defend against both Space Marine players. And he's now going to get forced off here as Guardian Weapons team is set up on his retreat path. Meanwhile, these double shooters trying to fire away here, but with the energy shield up and active, and only now just falling down, are going to get forced off. Had the energy shield gone down a bit quicker, or had there not been an energy shield, Guardian Weapons team would have more than likely been forced off. Meanwhile, Velzavul and Bulbus continue this joint push here, leaving zeetorq alone in the bottom side of the map. Meanwhile, the ASMs are actually going to capture the enemy power. That's going to give blue team a massive spike in power economy. It's going to come in very handy. Meanwhile, these tactical marines there for Velzavul coming in as reinforcements, but again, a little bit cut off. The APO's heal is on cooldown, should be coming up fairly soon though, and does have enough energy to actually use it, but still no upgrades here for Bulbus. Surprised not to actually see any just yet. Storm Bolter can always be extremely useful here against Imperial Guard and Eldar. Storm Bolter dealing 33 DPS is extremely effective. Second Chainsword also comes in quite useful, but Power Axe it would be better if you actually want to deal some decent damage. Meanwhile, Warlock is engaged here, trying to fend off the scouts. The Immolator does actually deal full damage on retreat when you immolate a certain area of the ground, although the Immolator ability isn't actually going to do too much damage to those units on retreat. Meanwhile, the Bionics there can be very useful against those Catechins, doing a fair amount of damage there on retreat. Meanwhile, the Banshee is going to get forced off. A Plasma Grenade does get thrown down, only catching out tail end of a single Shooter Boy model. The Banshee is barely escaping away there on a small amount of health. Meanwhile, these Dire Avengers are trying to fleet away. Could have used the Webway Gates as well to actually gain a little bit of extra speed using the Windwalk ability. This Guardian Weapons team is just walking up into the face of these Sluggers. Is not attempting to set up whatsoever, but the Sluggers are actually going to get forced off in the end, and the Mekboy, without any energy to teleport in, is forced to just take a step back here and allow the shooters to demolish this generator farm. The Guardian Weapons team is going to set up here, and the Mekboy nearly enough energy to teleport. In fact, the Farseer is just sprinting in, and Daka, what's that, is actually going to get used onto the Farseer to suppress her instantly. There is a building on the top side of the map, but we've not actually seen much use of it throughout the game. That's because of the electric armor and because of the plasma grenade onto the Dire Avengers. Is just a massive risk for anyone who actually wants to use this building. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map is going to be another joint push here by both Space Marine players, and Ordre is going to get forced off. zeetorq is making his way towards the bottom side of the map. Fire Dragons are a first purchase here for zeetorq, which is kind of an odd choice given that there's no vehicles on the map. There is a vehicle for Akiro, but none that zeetorq will have to be dealing with himself. The Warlock is going to be leading in the engagement, though he does not actually have any armor whatsoever and just takes so much damage and gets forced off. Meanwhile, the Bionics there on that Techmarine doing fair amounts of damage there to the Banshees, and the Exarch is actually going to go down in the very first engagement. Meanwhile, Stormtroopers and Guardsmen are now coming in onto the scene. Catechins can have a prime opportunity there for the Unreliable to catch out the entire army. Both Space Marine players, Scouts, are going to go down. These nearly unupgraded Scouts. They only actually have the shotgun upgrade, no further upgrades on them. Fire Dragons also onto the scene. Their melted damage very effective against all kinds of targets. But the Guardsmen are backing away, leaving the Fire Dragons alone. Fire Dragons are heavy infantry as well, so tactical marines can use cracking rounds to do increased damage to them. Plasma grenade onto retreat. Gonna be able to take down an ASM model. A second plasma grenade going to go down, going to take down 2 tactical marines there. That's going to cost Velzavul quite a bit in terms of requisition. You know, unreliable there. Looks like it actually went off in the face, or that was just like 2 scout grenades, in fact, going off, not an unreliable. On top of the guardsman, nearly killing a Catechin squad, but not quite. You know, on the other side, Matt Falcon proving a bit of a problem there for Hunter. Does have some looters on the scene. I imagine these looters going to be upgraded to beamy looters, and you can see the upgrade already in progress. A Weird Boy is also there as well. Weird Boy is actually quite effective against vehicles, given that the Weird Boy does do plasma cannon damage, but his shots are not particularly accurate. If the Falcon remains idle though, the Weird Boy should be able to get some easy shots in, and these Stormtroopers with melter guns going to be meleeing down the generator farm here of the enemy. Red team do need to recapture that as soon as possible, but the Stormtroopers should actually use their melter guns rather than trying to manually melee it down. You know what, Hunter's actually got a generator farm of his own built over onto the other side, since he can't seem to get control of the VP just yet. He's actually built a generator farm here to entice Akiro to come out on the other side. Meanwhile, a Psychic Storm on top of these shooters, on top of these looters here, nearly wiping one of the squads. They're down just to absolutely no health, and we'll actually be able to finish them off. Sluggers are getting suppressed here by the Banshee's wailing scream. Makes it very difficult for them to actually chase any further. The Weird Boy prevents himself from firing to not actually knock over those allied slugger units. And Ogrins onto the bomb side here. No Bonehead just yet. The Lord Commissar does have the Carapace armor. Could always go for the Bionic Eye with these Ogrins to get them to sprint in at incredible movement speed. You want the Apo now upgrade to the Storm Bolts, in fact fully upgraded. Going to go ahead with that full auto ability onto the Lord Commissar. Can be blocked though with the Refractor Shield. But a Dreadnought is going to come in, a melee variant Dreadnought, meaning the Ogrins can't really do too much. Stormtroopers are already on the scene with Fire Dragons, so that Dreadnought will need to be very careful here. One Melter Bomb has already gone down. Fire Dragons do not have a Melter Bomb themselves, but the Ogrins can try and tie it up once that initial Melter Bomb has worn out. You know, retreat grenades are going to try and go down, but retreat grenades are not going to hit quite, and there's already a Vanguard veteran squad on the field. Velzavul looks like it just takes straight up to tier 3. Rather than going for any kind of tier 2 whatsoever. Grenades onto the Fire Dragons prevents them from doing too much and force them into a retreat. You know, the Vanguard Veteran is going to be very effective against these Ogrins with their power melee weapons. Pretty much all the entire squad has power melee weapons, but the squad does need to be careful overall though, since it is level 1 and isn't doing too much. Meanwhile, the Blessings of the Omnissiah are going to repair up this Dreadnought. Scouts are in pursuit of the Dreadnought to try and get some repairs on it as well. The Blessings of the Omnissiah have now run out, and it looks like blue team will be able to hold their position and force red team off. I'm very surprised by this early tech up there by Velzavul just to get out a Vanguard veteran squad. Meanwhile, the beamy looters there able to take down a Falcon, and the Weird Boy coming in for the save onto the shooter boys, allowing them to escape with a small amount of health. Banshee's going to try and tie up the looters, but it's a little bit too late there, as that Falcon is already dead. The looters will be able to escape, and the sluggers should be able to engage these Banshees fairly easily. Banshees do have the higher melee skill at 70, and sluggers, with the exception of Knob Leader, having only 60, but the problem is but the Banshees just have no health whatsoever. The Farseer also equipping herself with the Singing Spear upgrade, which I'm very surprised about. Singing Spear is not something you normally see on the Farseer. It doesn't offer her any kind of utility whatsoever. It does provide her with heavy melee damage, very effective against vehicles in particular, but beyond that there are no abilities to be had whatsoever in comparison to the Doombringer or even the Gravity Blade, which I think the Gravity Blade would have been the better choice here to lift up those enemy slugs, allowing the Banshees to straight up win the engagements very easily. Some nice use there from red team, using the immolates on the mines to actually detonate it on top of those enemy units, the mines that were not detonating themselves because scouts with detection were able to detect the mines, and the mines won't go off when detected by the enemy team. Meanwhile, the Warlock is going to sacrifice his own life in order to detonate those mines, but the Lord Commissar is in the vicinity and can go in for a res, assuming that red team can force off the remaining blue forces. Catechin is going to get executed there with the Carapace armor, giving them increased damage by 100%, but also preventing them from being able to retreat away. Going to engage these tactical marines, and they show no fear is getting activated, giving them a 50% chance to special enemy units, and these tactical marines are able to hold their own now in melee combat, but do need to be very careful because as soon as that runs out they will get demolished there by the power melee and heavy melee weapons on the field. The Apo is going to be forced off. Meanwhile, Lord Commissar is carrying on, trying to chase in further, is forced into retreat, and that means that Warlock is not going to get rezzed up. In fact, actually gets repurchased there by zeetorq, knowing that he's not going to get rezzed for a little while. And Vanguard Veterans back on the scene, level 2, Standguard Veterans level 1. Surprised the Standguard Veterans haven't managed to hit level 2 just yet. And it's going to be a Land Raider Redeemer there for Velzavul, going for a very lightweight army into some big purchases. You know, the weird boy there, going to get suppressed by the Guardian Weapons team. The Mekboy is going to teleport on top and force melee. Makes it very difficult to make Guardian Weapons teams actually work there against a teleporting commander, given that you can always just teleport on top. And the Orks coming in there, going to leap on top of the Farseer to give her increased movement speed and damage, and to knock back nearby units. Banshees are going to jump in, but the weird boy is going to use the Warp Vomit and prevent the entire squad from being able to jump into combat just yet. But the Orks and Banshee combination should be able to win this engagement fairly easily against those sluggers and against the remaining forces here of Hunter. Should be able to chase down the slugger squad, might be able to though. Down to just 37 HP. We'll be able to finish off the squad. That weird boy is very vulnerable right now. The Banshee's actually ignoring him in favor of the looters. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, red team are grouping up together to take on Velzavul and Bulbus. But there is a Land Raider Redeemer on the way and should be coming out fairly soon. Some mines are going to get placed onto the ground. 210 VPs to 124. VPs taking down very quickly for both teams, given that there are 3 contested VPs rather than 1 natural VP per team and 1 contested. It does mean that the VPs tend to tick down much quicker. Dreadnought is going to engage into combat. Once again, this Dreadnought is leveled up, and there's a Fire Prism here. This Dreadnought is not going to make it out alive, but it's going to do a little bit of tanking now. For it might do a little bit more tanking than that, didn't actually do as much as expected. There's going to be a Terminator call-in on the scene here for Bulbus. Terminators should be able to help out a little bit here, but Terminators do need to be very careful. They do not have any melee resistance whatsoever against these Ogrins. And given that they are double plasma guardsmen, it might make it a bit difficult for them to even sit into ranged combat. But if they get the heavy flame upgrade, and if Bulbus gets a Librarian, can always warp them out to safety and allows Terminators to go in very aggressively. Scouts into the center of the map here. Fire Dragons going to fire away at these scouts. The Fire Prism using the dispersed beam can knock back the entire squad, so the scouts do back away. Meanwhile, the Imperial Guard player 227 is going to back away there, take a little bit of a step back, and the Terminator is going to arm themselves with the Cyclone missile launcher. But the Land Raider Redeemer is on the scene together with the Apothecary, together with Bulbus. In fact, it's going to make it very difficult for Red Team to force them off. The Apo healing with the Arbor, the Apothecary on top of the Land Raider Redeemer, providing a health regeneration aura. It's going to be very difficult for Red Team to handle. zeetorq could try and save up for an Eldritch Storm, does have 330 red. Meanwhile, the Lord Commissar should consider getting a heavy weapons team with a Last Cannon. An executed Last Cannon deals double the damage, dealing an incredible amount, even to something that has 2,500 HP. It's still quite the threat. Banshee's going to engage here. These Terminators without any melee resistance do need to be very careful against the power swords of the Banshees. As much as these Terminators do have 4,500 HP of super heavy infantry, they are still vulnerable to the power swords. In fact, the Banshees may even go down in this engagement. The Banshees are so low right now, will fall down. The Exarch dying, followed by the last member alive. Meanwhile, Vanguard Veterans jumping in one by one, going to engage. That Warlock is going to go down. The power melee weapons are so effective against those Fire Dragons, which only have heavy infantry. The power melee weapons dealing bonus damage to them. Meanwhile, mines on retreat here. Ogrins going to try and engage those scouts, but scouts with detection will be able to see those mines and won't be able to sneak right through them. In fact, these scouts retreating a little bit of an awkward path there, going towards that Land Raider Redeemer rather than going to the base. Meanwhile, super tough beam onto these knobs here, preventing them from knockback, giving them 75% damage resistance, preventing them from being able to get suppressed. The Banshees don't really stand much of a chance against them, especially when combined with the Frenzy ability as well. 75% damage resistance, knockback immunity, and suppression immunity, similar to Frenzy, but not quite Frenzy. But you can always use Frenzy, and then you can use super tough beam as soon as Frenzy runs out, giving your knobs so much time to just do so much work. These tactical marines and scouts do need to be a little bit careful. That Fire Prism is doing a lot of damage. The dispersed beam onto so many grouped up units there. Land Raider Redeemer is slowly pushing in this VP belonging to Red Team instead of Blue Team. Blue Team do need to make a capture there on that VP, since it should be theirs at this point with the Land Raider Redeemer on top of it. You know, the Vanguard veterans though overextending here. The Ogrins and Lord Commissar are actually going to be able to wipe those Vanguard veterans. That's a massive loss there for Velzavul. The Land Raider Redeemer here is here, and 2 armies are there to support those Vanguards, but there was just no support there in time to actually help them out. You know, Terminators teleporting in very aggressively. Do use their Cyclone Missile Barrage, but there's a little bit of elevated terrain here. It makes it very difficult to actually land those Cyclone Barrages, and they just miss completely. You know, the VPs are getting a little bit closer. It's now a triple cap for a blue team, and that's going to be a massive threat towards red team, given that they only have 84 VPs. Commandos on the scene, knocking back that. Also actually does have the energy shield on here as well, but no energy left remaining. Is forced into retreat. A D-cannon on the top side along with the Guardian Weapons team, and the Seer Council coming in for a flank there. Could have wiped those looters, but Knobs are going to go in. They do have their huge hammers upgrade. You can see the rings coming into them. Singularity is going to go down. It's going to pull those Knobs in, going to pull them away from the Seer Council. Frenzy is activated. These Knobs not taking any damage whatsoever, and the Seer Council is going to try and re-engage. Their power melee weapons are very effective against the heavy infantry that these Knobs have, but the Seer Council are unable to actually stand up against them. They're still at level 1. You know, grenade going to go down here on top of these Knobs, and it's going to force them into a retreat. Meanwhile, on the bottom side of the map, that armor of the Apothecary and doing a lot of work, healing up the entire Space Marine army together. And red team are just slowly bleeding VPs, and looks like it's going to be over for them fairly soon. I should bring blue team down to just a single cap instead. Frag assault on top of these stormtroopers, and Ogrins dealing some significant damage, and Eldar Storm's going to go down on top of the Land Raider Redeemer. That could be it for it. Does do a lot of damage. 1 Stormtrooper model remains alive. In fact, 2 Stormtrooper models remain alive. The Stormtrooper squad is going to get wiped. Ogrins are also going to get wiped at the same time. Loads of units are just dying here in the area. And Land Raider Redeemer is getting the blessings of the Omnissiah. Lord Commissar is trying to fist it. The Land Raider Redeemer has no rear armor, so the Lord Commissar will not be able to get any bonus damage, but the Land Raider Redeemer is actually going to fall down in the engagement. Had it not been able to finish it, the Fire Prism might have been able to finish it, but the Fire Prism is not needed to come into the area to finish it off. Meanwhile, on the top side of the map here, the Orks are going to be jumping in onto the Mekboy, but the Mekboy with that bouncy shield preventing her from being able to jump on top of him. The Seer Council are going to try and jump in themselves, but are just going to get bounced away. In fact, the bouncy shield runs out there to make Winnie's teleport away. Teleports just in time to get inside that building. The commandos will be forced off, and I think that's an Eldritch Storm on top of the building. And that just wipes everything inside of that building away. The Mekboy and both the Weird Boy are going to go down, but these Knobs are going to be engaging here. The Seer Council and the Orks needs to jump on top of the Seer Council to buff and frenzy. A lot of these huge hammers gain full momentum here. These Seer Council just gain absolutely demolished. In fact, they might even get chased down here. The one model is down to 120, just dies straight up, and the Orks is now forced away, unable to do anything by herself. And red team hanging in there with 10 VPs total. Fire Prism doing some decent work there from range. The Angel's Death is activated. A Terminator model going to go down very early on, given that the squad is 4,500 HP and at max, and only had 2,703. Unfortunate for them to lose a model so early on, but the Seer Council now trying to chase away Terminators, unable to retreat. The Seer Council there for a zeetorq, the ability to also get increased movement speed from Fleet of Foot and the Warlock Globals to increase movement speed. That's going to be a dead squad potentially. The marked target on the Techmarine going to get used onto the Seer Council, but there's not enough damage there to force them off in time. Techmarine surprisingly gone for the plasma gun, very effective against Ogrins, very effective against Fire Dragons, but I would have thought that he would have kept his default weapon. Well, there's one set of Terminators remaining. Another Land Raider Redeemer is going to get built by Bulbus, but there's also the Baneblade that has just come out for 227. That's going to prove a bit of a problem there for a blue team who don't actually have much AV. In fact, they don't have many units at all. Got the weapons team onto the top side here. Commandos doing a nice job of disruption here. Commandos the ability to knock back units with the Love to Dagger ability, the Burner Bomb ability, the Smoke Bomb ability, just so much utility from them. You know, on the center of map, Tactical Marines are trying to go in a bit desperately for the cap onto the VP, losing the Sergeant and forced off on the field. The Baneblade is now hitting hard, and the triple cap for red team means it could be the end for blue team unless they move very quickly. 25 VPs remaining is not going to last too long, and blue team just have nothing in the way to capture Tactical Marines. Well, not Tactical Marines. Terminator's going to go towards the bottom there to try and get captured. And Terminators with Tactical Marines in the center there, but those Tactical Marines going to get blown up by the grenade, and it's not going to be in time, unable to get a decal whatsoever. And red team going to be able to make the comeback here on 10 VPs after being down by 90 earlier on. Red team making that comeback.